Hey everybody, what's happening? Uh, Welcome to what I'm calling the self-awareness episode. It's been probably been a couple weeks for me. I've been getting over COVID, which was a joy. Not that I was feeling bad. It's just you're zonked, and just trying to get back in gear in a lot of ways. But there's a lot going on right now. And there are some heavy, big, weighty topics, the kind that if you even speak about, you get into trouble no matter what you say, because the fever pitch of anger and so forth is so high. So part of me said, don't do this, don't touch it, because there's no advantage for me to touch it. And I'm not sure I could do that. It's because it's a cop-out. The truth is, it's a cop-out. If it's true that our greatest tool towards any kind of understanding and progress were the voluminous issues we have in the world, understanding ourselves perhaps is conversation and speaking out, that is helpful. Even something like this that might spur a conversation, then it's worth doing. I don't think you get to not speak out on things. I just don't. I think if there are big topics, you kind of have a responsibility to hit them. It's almost a civic duty. So this is all about, I think if there's a through line, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on and seems very relevant. And as disparate as they may seem, I think there is a through line, and this through line is self-awareness. For most people, I think it's the lack of self-awareness, and including for the press, that seems to be so concerned with the tactical on what's on the ground that there's almost an inability to get out of the dust and get strategic and see stuff from top down, and sometimes that does elucidate things and makes things a little clearer in broader strokes. Sometimes that helps, especially if all you're doing is you're stuck in the dust trying to make sense of it all. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Some of it's silly, some of it extremely heavy, but I think the curse of this lack of self-awareness that we have just cuts right through. Let's start with dumb things. Matthew Perry died, and with Matthew Perry dying, there was all sorts of retrospective talk about how the cultural import of Friends. Well, let's go. I have no real strong feelings about Matthew Perry one way or another. What I found intriguing was this need to take something like Friends and see it as a cultural moment. Just because I lived in New York City in the 90s, which was kind of where and when Friends took place. And look, I always thought it was poorly written, not funny, intentionally sort of dumbed down. And I thought it was comfort food for white people, making white people feel comfortable with their whiteness. Well, why you not? Why are you being like that? And why? Because that's a lot of what was going on there. Were there a lot of black characters? No. Was New York like that? No, but New York at that time sure wanted to be like that. A lot of New York at that time, the city was run by Giuliani. And I know people sit there and go, yes, and he went off the rails and he lost it. No, he was always like this. He was a fascist his whole career. He just hid it a little bit more. There were people in New York then, I remember very, very well, it being a great betrayal, if you ask me, how the city was being run more by the by the people in suburbia than by the city itself. It was, boy, we love what Giuliani's done with the city because we don't, the homeless people are off the streets. Yeah, the homeless people were moved from the areas that the suburbanites traversed during their commute, so they didn't see them. They were still there. They just moved them so where they wouldn't see them, so their whiteness wouldn't be, they wouldn't have any guilt about it. It was a time really, it was a turning point in a way of unbelievable laziness, from the sense of, gee, you have you have sort of a public duty here to be involved and be interested and know what's going on, and people just going, no, I'm just tired of it, and I'm not going to pay attention to any of that. Because of too self-involvement with their own lives and all that sort of thing. And the friends reflected that really well. There was the level of vapid, the dumbing it down of America finally finding its moment there, where you go, yes, this is what all of this has led to this kind of stupidity. People who just, I think the thing is about all of that, and that you make the, why you make the criticism of white people, this lack of self-awareness, this total inability to recognize their own privilege. The idea that, well, it works out for me, so I don't really look into it much further than that. As long as there is a greater responsibility that we have. It's not just all about me. What helps me out? Well, my situation is secure, so screw everybody else. You know that is an immoral, unethical attitude shared by an enormous amount of white people who, why look for trouble? Why be introspective? Why ever consider the possibility that other people are loving? Well, I have problems in my life, and isn't everything easy for me? No, never. There's degrees and degrees of how difficult things are for people. No understanding of that. And it's the eagerness to close those doors off, put those blinders on, and not see what they don't want to see. All sorts of poverty, all sorts of stuff. No, I don't want to, no. That turns into a those people thing. Inherently screwed and racist and etc. And a culture totally comfortable with it. And to me, Friends was comfort food for that crowd with those attitudes. Nothing to celebrate there. They were not funny. Good Lord, you have to have a pretty, talk about a narrow existence to find that stuff funny. And this was not a talented cast. Lisa Kudrow was a talented person and took the gig, and good for her. She made a lot of money. Good for Lisa Kudrow. Aniston as an actor has good timing, and she's not an untalented person. But other than that, I mean, this was lousy. But if you look at that as being symbolic of the time, you shouldn't sit there and lift it up as what a wonderful thing it is. You should sit there and go, oh my God. Boy, that wasn't good. And hope that we could do better than that, because it wasn't great. I lived in New York during those years, and I remember it well. I remember thinking at the time, oh my God, what is wrong with people? I love how woke, a term that was, right, an African-American term for, are you aware of what's going on? You're not just buying the narrative, right? You've got to have enough awareness to really drill down and think, has been co-opted to being a bad thing by Republicans. And the press lets them get away with it and says, yes, oh yes, the woke agenda, yes. Yeah. The idea of being self-aware, no, we're against self-awareness. Essentially, the Republican message. Speaking of Republicans and elections, just had one, and I guess, we kept Mississippi. That's the best thing the Republicans have got to say, their deepest red place. Virginia was bellwether and bad for them. Ohio, I thought was going to go that way. It did. A Democratic governor winning in Kentucky, reelected. And yet every poll says Biden cannot win. A poll a year out, does that have, what is the value of that? Every election, now, again and again and again and again, Democrats keep winning. And abortion rights keep winning. And no, Joe Biden is not a sexy candidate. I'm not crazy about Joe Biden. Never was. Still am not. But in a year from now, or make it next September, people will start to pay attention. Real people will start to pay attention to an election. Not just the cognoscenti who loves elections. I mean, just everyday folks will start to really drill down on it. And they will realize and connect, okay, I may not like this candidate, but I connect abortion rights with Biden, and they will probably thus vote for Biden. There's no snapshot poll now, because in the abstract, people are like, yeah, I'm not turned on by Biden. That's no surprise. But where they're going to be when the chips are down, these polls cannot measure that. The entire mood of the country will be in a whole other place, because we'll now be drilling down on election cycle stuff. So the polls don't look good. It's a year out. The polls mean nothing. And the polls have repeatedly been wrong. I would invite you to keep score with your media sources. Keep score. They predict stuff as much as they report what's going on. Half of what they do is predicting what's going to happen next, because people have this, can't stand the idea that we don't know what's going to happen. Truth is, we don't know what's going to happen. Right. You can't know the future. We hate it. So we invent things that give us this, we're sure now what's going to happen, because we can't stand the idea of not knowing. It's why we have religion. We've got to have some answer. We can put it in a box, and then we can put the box in. Oh, thank God. Because we can't stand, we've got to have this bedrock in a universe where there ain't a hell of a lot of bedrock. Anything can happen. Pretty much. So we're going to work on polls, but keep score of what they're predicting, because you will find that some people get it right most of the time. And by get it right, I mean, if you're in the predicting business, if you get it right 2/3 of the time, if you're about 66% right, that's about as good as you're going to get. If you find people that are predicting more often than not correctly, see what they have to say. But you will find, if you really do keep score, that a lot of people at major news sources or major news sources themselves get these things wrong again and again and again and again. So why are we listening to them? And if they're wrong so often, self-awareness, they're not recognizing that their methodology doesn't get it right, or they don't really care because these articles are just to get engagement, mouse clicks, whatever, and they're placeholders until the real story happens next fall anyhow. Is that not part of the ecosystem here? News to a degree is a hype machine. Again, awareness, got to recognize that some of that is going on. Are people playing games? Yes. Hey, CNN's become, right light. A lot of reporters there, they are staunch journalists, and we would never lean when they leaned all one way for a while. Now the company's gone on, okay, well, will you lean all that way now? Yes. Come on. Men of great integrity, yes. None whatsoever. whatever the bosses say. So keep an eye on that stuff, but don't buy these "the sky is falling" stories. Oh, what else have we got? We've got Sam Bankman-Fried. Sam Bankman-Fried, interesting story in that this is actually one of those times where the actual justice system actually functioned. Yeah, with 7 charges of wire fraud. Jesus, bad. He was found guilty in 4 hours. Yeah, he was an unbelievable shyster bastard. that, his parents are one of wow. These are people who lawyers who teach legal ethics at Stanford, and were trying to sending emails to their son why they weren't getting more money from him. It's unbelievable how crooked these folks are. And Bankman-Fried himself, is he just nuts? Does he actually believe this stuff? I would guess on some level he can't. But somebody made a great point. Someone I'm not even usually crazy about, Stephanie Rule, who's MSNBC, but she's knows her stuff, but I also think of her as a tremendous phony, bit of a hypocrite. But I know but she does know her subject matter, and her subject matter has traditionally been business. Made a good point's a good point. And the other night she mentioned this, right? A year ago, it all falls apart, right? And we're all seeing Sam Bankman-Fried for what he is. Okay. What about the year before that? In the year before that, top financial people, that industry, political people, because they were getting money, and they were getting money on both sides. Most of it liberals, but a lot of Republicans too. Okay. Everyone was getting money. But the people in that industry were looking at him going, he's the boy wonder. He knows things that no one's ever known before. They were buying into his BS. They were buying the act. Where's their ability? Where was their self-awareness? Or their awareness of the situation? These are supposedly the best of the brightest. They've seen this before. They've seen it all, right? They could suss through things. Turns out they really talk about a house of cards, right? Built on confidence, built on belief in this and belief in that. So for a whole year, people were, and years before that, people were buying this guy. How bad's the judgment? And the judgment is horrifically bad. So, yeah, fascinating story. Look, he's up for 110 years in jail. And there's another trial, I think in February, March. So he's not, but he'll probably get 20 to 30. And I think they really should throw the book at him for longer. But boy, these things do say something about just how bad a lot of folks are, and to the degree just how bad is getting away with being just how bad. Extraordinary to me. And we're not doing a very good job. I guess, and I do think it is a reflection of the culture at large. We're living in very corrupt times because people are very corrupt. There are time and time again really wrong things going on, and everyone's just going, well, if they can get away with it, I guess it's okay. We should be vastly better than this. Okay, now we get to hit the part that I've been struggling with so much. And the one I've been struggling with is the Middle East. If you speak on it, again, there are voices that will say, you have no right to speak on this. You are not, if anything that you say is, you're leaning towards Israel in any sense, then you are you support the oppressors, and there's that view. If you criticize the state of Israel, you are either an anti-Semite or allowing for anti-Semitism. And there's clearly no winning. It is incredibly tough. I'm gonna try to hit this from another angle, because I think we've been hitting the obvious angles to death. To me, look, it's an enormous subject, right? The history, I've been watching it my whole life, and it predates me, right? It's 70 years old or whatever. The subject is very, very long. It's even older than that. You can go further back. But so there's very deep stuff to talk about here. Someone riffing, okay. So I'm really going to try to be careful. There are a few things that I think we can state that shouldn't be incredibly controversial. Hamas, Hezbollah has no standing. Done. Okay? No standing. There's no argument. Okay. Why does this happen in the first place? Israel and the Saudis were getting close to having, a normalization, and Tehran couldn't have that. And so something happens. And I would guess that they pulled the trigger on this. Because they're in charge of what goes on with Hezbollah and, Hamas. So who represents actual Palestinians? Certainly not Hamas, although they're trying to do that. The Palestinian Authority has been undercut by Hamas, but also to some degree by Israel. So the Palestinians themselves have no power because they have no money. That is awful, and that is true. Okay. So, if you criticize Israel's response, which I think is fair, because you could criticize the state of Israel without being an anti-Semite. It is a government. There are people. You are criticizing that. What Hamas did is beyond the pale, right? Israel's response, you as a civilized nation, you cannot cut off power and water and food and bomb civilians. Okay, so now there are people sitting here, you can't say that. You can't, because there is rising anti-Semitism, tremendous rising anti-Semitism. And the danger is, look, if you criticize the state of Israel, Netanyahu, etc., there is a sense that you are opening a door, or a lot of people who are anti-Semites see that as an opening for them to now run for their anti-Semitism. And that by making this criticism, which is a valid criticism, that you are accidentally opening this door for tons of... I think that's probably true. And yet I think you still make the criticism. And while you do it, as I am, you sit there and go, well, wait a minute. Don't let that be people running for more racism and more of that. You see it, and there's a ton of it that will be coming out of China and Russia and various places. Lots of anti-Semitism. And you'll look, there is an uptick of anti-Semitism. It often happens on the left because the left is more likely to have lots of competing voices. The very strict, look, anti-Semitism, the Labour Party in England had issues with that. It's there. It's a problem. I'm leftist. That's a problem, right? So there is a danger to when you make these criticisms that I think are valid and that do need to be made. But you've got to, while you're doing it, there is a responsibility to sit there and go, this is not, right when Trump said all the things that he said, every fascist known to man was like, great, it's now legal to say the things we always wanted to say. That you can't, in Trump's case, he is a fascist, but now there's a disconnect. There's people making a criticism, a fair criticism of a state, and it does open a door for it. So as that's happening, you sit there and go, no, hold on, you cannot go there, and that's not what I am allowing. That's not what I am suggesting. So you have to be very careful in your statements. Let's go big picture on this. My big picture on this is, I'm watching the Israeli response, and I don't think it makes them more secure. I think it makes them less secure. I know I have a lot of, well, you wouldn't see it here because I'd have to show you the whole room, and I'd have to go in the upstairs of my house where you see lots and lots of books, and most of those books are history. I'm a huge history buff and always have been. If I hadn't been a musician, I would have been a historian. I know of no, if you read through history, you know of no nations that through force of arms, take over the world. Wars of aggression they are never really successful. It's not a way, the path towards peace doesn't run through armed conflict. I'll go one better, if we're getting really strategic. Tehran and Riyadh, right? There's a conflict there. But both of those nations, a number of the nations there, and Israel itself, there is strong religious fundamentalism in all of those places. And religious fundamentalism, the road to peace, does not go through a place in which there is religious fundamentalism. Religious fundamentalism can't have that. It is almost by itself a road to conflict, because anything not just like the folks who holding whatever particular views are impure or not right, and history teaches us that as well. There can be no tolerance for those who are not on board. So people sit there and go, when will we have peace in the Middle East? Not with countries that remain at their heart about religious fundamentalism. And Tehran, clearly Iran couldn't get more. The fundamentalism couldn't be stronger. Saudis, it's extremely strong. The Israelis at least have a chance to be democratic. But they have voted against democratic norms. That's why we have Netanyahu, who I don't see as a great avatar of democracy. So, Israel has the opportunity. There are people there who understand that democracy being a good thing. But there is an unbelievable right wing there. And Yitzhak Rabin made peace, and he was shot by a right winger. There could be no peace. It was not pure enough. The settler movement in Israel is a major problem. That has to go away. They can't do that. They have to stop doing that. But I don't know. It's more, Israel's got some problems, but there's some hope that Israel can reform it, because Israel has been okay and been in better places. I'm not sure about the others, whether those countries can. Until the religious fundamentalism is less a part of the picture, I see no long-term solution. I see no way, no real pathway to a real peace. Not just we haven't been at it here for a good 5-10 years. That's not really peace. That's just waiting for the next conflict to occur. I mean, real peace. Real peace. The different, peace like, okay, I'm leaving Illinois and I'm going to Indiana. I mean, peace. I don't see that. I don't see that. So the cultural change, it could be multiple generations to fix that. Why is the U.S. involved? Well, okay, I'm not thrilled with the fact that I understand that there's how if we're not involved, someone else is involved, right? So, okay, there's some of that. Am I thrilled with U.S. arms being used over there? No. I think it puts any administration in sort of an impossible situation anyhow. So I don't see a lot of good actors. But I do see the dangers in making. There are dangers to making criticism, because the people will take it as a chance to do something. Okay, those are valid concerns, but I disagree with the voices that would say don't speak. You can't speak on it. It cannot be discussed. That shushing is they almost abjectly meaning you've made a point. They don't want to hear your point because they want to control a narrative. So those arguments get very tough. I think you've got to, on some level, talk about it. I'm sure you're not there. You haven't lived there. Okay. Everyone gets to have, even though a lot of people haven't lived there, there are people all over the world who get to have an opinion on the subject. You get to do it. A lot of people, I'm sure, don't like that, but you get to do it. Hopefully you're as informed as you can make yourself. You try, you listen to different voices, but you're allowed to have an opinion. And again, the thing that bothers me in all this is our ability to put the blinders on, believe whatever narrative that makes us comfortable, instead of dealing with uncomfortable truths. Realizing that no one comes off without blood on their hands on this. Okay, now that that's the case, what do we do? There's all sorts of blame to be pinned on all sorts of people. People that you are ostensibly on the quote unquote the right side of things. There's no good. There's no one gets off scot-free, even close. And there are ordinary people that are being hurt. Obviously, some of them were Israelis, but more of them at this point certainly are the folks in Gaza. So no, there's no elegant way out of this. But I think the deeper problem, and no one wants to talk about the deeper problems, the fact that these are all countries with religious. Look, I'm an atheist. I'm not taking a religious point of view on all this. What, a pox on all their houses? Yeah, they're all fundamentally, right, have a very flawed view of what the nature of reality is. Okay, that's great. And they've got to somehow get along. Yeah, I oppose all of it. So, it's tough. It's very tough. But as bad as the situation is, talking about it, I think and it's messy conversation, but is so necessary. Only through talking, using that tool, is how we get more awareness, understanding how someone else might feel. And you can accuse me. Look, I'm as guilty as any. We all have biases. I'm guilty too, right? But I'm trying to fight them. Maybe I'm not trying hard enough, but I'm trying to fight them. And you've got to have that, at least that as a starting place. You got to at least try to be, what am I missing here? What can I learn more about? What's a different perspective? What's a different angle? That's got to be part of what's going on here. So yeah, This is a tougher slog. But we don't get a. I don't think we get to. I don't think we've got to hit these things. You don't get a pass. You gotta think through them. We have a responsibility we're the adults. You don't just, yeah, it's just too uncomfortable. I don't want to think about it. That's not okay. I want to talk about moral wrongs and all this. Apathy. Got to talk about it. Is it our favorite thing to talk about? Maybe not. Got to talk about it anyway. Got to at least think through it. So that's what I've got for you. See, nice and light. Isn't this light and frothy? But, if any of this was helpful, great. You always like and subscribe. You can feel free to comment. Let me know. You may find me to be a terrible person. I apologize in advance. I'm doing my best over here. I would like to give you that pass that you're doing your best too. Maybe starting from a place of that knowing that people's at least are coming from, no matter what your view, that you're at least coming from a point of view where you're trying to be honest and there's some sincerity there. And we're going to make, whatever arguments we're going to hopefully make good faith arguments to have an actual discussion. That would be good. All right, I will talk to you guys soon. Hopefully next time it'll be much lighter. I'll go somewhere else, or the situation will have changed and there'll be other stuff to talk about. Take care, kids. Think about the tough stuff, but take care. Breathe in, breathe out. And hey, listen, we're soon to be in the middle of holidays and other things, and a nice time to back off from all of that and go for a different period, a period of family. And, again, I'm going to have a very secular Christmas like I always do. And yet it's still, whatever function you want to give that, it's still make it a solstice party, fine. But it still performs that function that is good. So we'll go do that. But I'll talk to you in a couple of weeks and we'll see where we're at. Peace, everybody.